Okay, good evening. Seems like others will not join. So, anyways, I start the lesson. Um, we finished more concepts under lesson 2. So, if I go through the lesson, just to summarize you, the things we discussed so far, we discussed about a few assumptions and under scientific research, and we discussed the limitations of the scientific method as well. And moving on to the research designing and methods, we discuss few steps we need to follow when we design our research. And main characteristics of the research methods we discuss, right? So neutrality should be there, and our research method should be reliable and should be a valid one, and the generalization should be there. So those are the main, there are many more characteristics, but these are the main key characteristics of a research method. And then we discuss about the sampling methods as well. So under sampling methods, we identified that we have probability sampling and the non-probability sampling. Um, then we discuss about the probability sampling, where we assume that there is a equal probability of choosing each and every individual, right? So out of the population, when we select our sample, there is a equal chance to be a part of the selected sample. When it comes to probability sampling, so under probability sampling, we discussed 4 types of sampling techniques: random sampling, stratified sampling, systematic sampling, and cluster sampling. Although we are randomly selecting the persons here, right? So we should follow a good method, right? So that maybe you can assign some random numbers and select the participants, or else you can go through a good method, right? Go through a good method. Although you are practicing, although you are selecting random um, individuals for your sample, right? So there are I found few documents as well, like source materials. So I will share them with you. You can refer them as well. And there are some cases we can't, practically apply the probability sampling methods. So in that case, we can go for this non-probability sampling techniques, including convenience sampling, purposive sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. I'm not going to discuss in detail. I will just go through them. So, um, yes, those are the things we discuss under probability and non-probability sampling. And then we identified major research methodologies. So that can be, your research can be done as a qualitative research or else a quantitative research, or else you can combine those qualitative and the quantitative methodologies, and you can do a mixed method. You can follow a mixed method as well. So that is another option available. So qualitative one, we usually don't use any numerical data, numerical analytical part we don't do. We use numbers just to categorize our data, and it is a very descriptive analysis, right? A narrative analysis, more descriptions are there, in-depth analysis is there. So usually the thematic and the interpretive and some grounded analytic is done when it comes to qualitative one. And moving on the quantitative one, so it is not a descriptive one, right? It is a probabilistic one, right? And also the numerical data we use, right? Hypothetical development and the testing is done when it comes to quantitative study. And we can develop statistical testing and the statistical models as well, as since we are dealing with numbers. And you can either select qualitative or quantitative studies, or else you can start with the qualitative one and you can then combine it with quantitative study as well. So then you can add more value to your study and a credibility as well, right? It will be a good one, good work if you can, do a quantitative one, right? I'm not saying like qualitative is not good. Qualitative is also good. There are some cases we can't apply quantitative method, right? Especially when we analyze the behavior of the individuals, we can't quantify them. So we have to apply the qualitative study. A descriptive study should be done, right? Because we can't add numbers in when we analyze the human behaviors, right? We can't analyze them using numbers. We can only use the numbers just to categorize them, categorize different characteristics, right? Different data types, we can use numbers, but numerically or statistically, we can't analyze the human behavior, right? So, if you can remember, I told you that in physical sciences studies or research, we usually practice quantitative studies, or else we use mixed method. But there are some cases where we apply a little qualitative studies as well. And we discuss different research methods as well, including case study, observational studies, cohort studies, case control studies, right? Other than that, experimental studies are there. So we discuss them in detail, including the strength and the weaknesses as well. And especially when it comes to the cohort study, we identify two parts: retrospective cohort study and the prospective cohort study. So retrospective means where we look back and continue our study. So that means we found the individuals who have already experienced that condition or that disease, let's say. And when it comes to prospective cohort study, so we look ahead, right? So it is a future study. We are selecting a person who have never experienced that disease or the condition, and we conduct some analysis as well, like while looking at the future, right? We don't look at the historical data, we just look ahead and continue our study. So it will take more time, and it will take sometimes when we practice the cohort study, we have very limited source materials, right? Sometimes we can't found enough historical data for our study when it comes to cohort study. It takes some time because we are trying to discover something here, right? It takes more time to discover that one. Many more person, right? Not only a single researcher, more researchers may take place in this cohort study. It is like a group study, let's say. So group of people can continue this study. Sometimes after certain time period, since it takes long time period to complete the cohort study, once, let's say after 10 years or something, after let's say 5 to 10 years, sometimes we can't find out the initial starting person. So actual objective sometimes we miss. So a good method should be there, a good logical methodology should be there, systematic procedures should be there, right? Because we have limited access to the past data, right? As this is a broader study, and sometimes we can't assure the accuracy of the past data where we find out to continue our cohort study. So I mean, in terms of the time and in terms of the money, so it takes more money and it takes, high cost. And the effort is also higher than the other methods. Of course, the time, right? It takes, we can't complete a cohort study within 2-3 months. Sometimes it will take 5 to 10 years, sometimes more than 10 years it will take to complete this cohort study. It depends on the requirements and the conditions we have, right? It depends on the outcomes we find. And once we continue this cohort studies, after certain time periods, right, we can identify different factors. So based on that factors, we can conduct another study. So likewise, we can continue this study for a long period till we find out the exact, intended outcome. And then we discuss about the qualitative research and the data analysis part, and how we can collect the data, how we can analyze the data, and what type of documents we can analyze. And moving on to the quantitative study, we mainly identified different types of variable, including independent and dependent variables. And we discuss about the dependent variables and the independent variables. Yes. And the experimental research designing part also we discuss. So usually the physical science students, they do the experiments, right? Your development, right? Do the method, let's say either you are going to develop a machine or maybe methods, right? So we have to do experiment. So yes, so those are the things we discussed last week. So we have these three more parts, post these different types of testing, I would say. So post-test control group design is there, and pre-test post-test control group design is there, and another one is there, Solomon 4 group design. So if I move to the first one, this is post-test only control group. When it comes to post-test only control group, you can see here. When it comes to this post-test only control group, what we do is we don't conduct any pre-test, right? Of course, we do some inventions here. We test something, but we only conduct a post-test, right? So here we have three options now. In each option, in all these three options, we have experimental group and a control group, right? We have experimental group and a control group. We randomly select an experimental group and a control group. For the experimental group only, we do the invention or interventions we do. Only for the experimental group. We don't do anything to the control group, right? We don't apply any interventions to the control group. Only for the experimental group, we do everything what we identify. And later on, once we do these interventions, we do the post-its, right? We have experimental group, let's say A and B, experimental group and the control group. And for the experimental group, the intervention is done. And for the control group, we don't do anything. And once the intervention is done, after certain time period, we conduct a post-test for both experimental group and the control group, right? So in this design, what happens is researcher applies any treatment, let's say any treatment or any intervention only to the experimental group, and then measure the dependent variable in their post-test after the intervention, right? So that is what the researcher can do when it comes to post-test only control group design, right? The control group doesn't receive any treatment or any intervention, right? But it goes with natural conditions and we conduct the post-test, right? Let's say we have a 3 months period, let's say for an example, we have 3 months. And we have experimental group and a control group. And we are trying to test a new method, let's say. We are trying to apply a new process method. And we apply that intervention to the experimental group, and we don't apply it to the control group, that control group may follow the traditional method, not the intervention or new method. Experimental group follow the new method, control group follow the traditional method. After 3-month period, we conduct a post-test for both groups, right? Just to check whether there are any changes or not, right? So for an example, let's say you want to study you want to test the new online learning platform, right? Comparing the students' test scores in a course after the course period, right? So you are going to test let's say effectiveness of online learning platform, right? So in that case, what you do is you can select the experimental group and a control group from your selected class. And experimental group can use the new online platform, and the control group may follow the traditional learning method. Let's say physical classes, so one-to-one physical classes or traditional learning methods the control group may use, but the experimental group may practice the new online learning platform. After the course period, then we can give a common test, right? There are no any differences in the post test, right? The common test is given for both experimental and control group. Let's say we can arrange a paper and we can distribute to the students, right? That is a very general example. When it comes to the engineering side, the same scenario happen, but you should apply your theoretical knowledge as well, right? The engineering theoretical knowledge as well. So then you can conduct exam and you can assess the scores after the course time period and check whether there are, check the effectiveness of the new online learning platform or whether there are any changes in the marks or module scores or not. Or after the post test, you can even identify whether there is a difference or not using the traditional method and the online learning platform. So that is how we practice the post-test only control group, right? We can identify if there are any effect by comparing the results between the experimental group and the control group after the treatment, right? After the intervention, we can check whether if there are any effect when it comes to the intervention, because we are comparing two groups, right? Only with the comparison, we can identify whether there is a difference or any effect or not. If we don't have a control group, we can't actually check whether something is, we achieve something or not, right? And then moving on to the pre-test, post-test control group, it is a little different than the previous one. In the previous one, we conducted only a post-test. We didn't have a pre-test. But when it comes to the pre-test, post-test control group, what happened is, the dependent variable, here we analyze the effect, let's say the relationship between dependent and independent variable. So when it comes to pre-test and the post-test control group design, we measure the dependent variable before and after the intervention, not only after the intervention. In previous one, we measure the dependent variable after the intervention, right? Using both experimental and control group. But when it comes to pre-test and post-test control group design, we can measure our dependent variable before and after the intervention, referring to this experimental group and the control group. So we can have an in-depth analysis, right? Because it allows the researchers to observe any changes in the dependent variable over the time. Because we are conducting a pre-test and a post-test. So we can check whether if there are any changes or any effect over the time, and and also we can have a comparison as well. Because by measuring both pre-test and the post-test outcomes, we can see how much changes occurred due to the intervention. Right? We can compare the changes to the control group as well, because in earlier one, if we conduct only a post-test control group design, right? We can't assess how much changes has been done, how much changes occurred due to the intervention. But when it comes to this one, second one, we can check whether, okay, how much difference is there. We can assess it because we conduct a pre-test and we get an outcome. And then after certain time period, we conduct a post-test and we get the outcome and we can compare in order to identify the changes. We can measure it, right? So here also we have experimental group and the control group is there. But before moving to the intervention, we conduct a pre-test. We conduct a pre-test for both groups, experimental group and the control group, right? So then we can identify, let's say the initial status, initial measurements we can obtain. And then let's say you are going to apply a new manufacturing method, let's say in your assembly line, let's say in your manufacturing firm, you have assembly line and you are going to apply a new method, manufacturing method. And then you can apply that intervention, new manufacturing method into this experimental group and control group will follow the traditional manufacturing method. No any changes, no any new interventions, right? But let's say after certain time period, let's say after 5 months or after a quarter, we can conduct a common post-test. That post-test and the pre-test should be common, right? Experimental එකට එක test එකක් දීලා control group එකට තව test එකක් කරලා අපිට compare කරන්න බෑ. Same test එකකින් එකම විදිය test එකකින් තමයි මේ groups දෙක compare කරන්න ඕනේ. Right? So then after certain period, we can conduct a post-test for both experimental group and the control group, and we can measure the outcomes. So then we can have a very good comparison here because we are having pre-test data and the post-test data as well for both experimental and the control group. So that would be more effective than the post-test, post-test only control group design, right? So then moving on to the last one, Solomon 4 group design. So in this one, what happened is, this is little bit complex, right? Little bit complex than the previous two, because this is a combination of both pre-test and pre-test post-test control group design. So it will be more complex than the previous one. So here we use two groups who receive a pre-test, right? One is experimental and one is control. And again, we use two groups who do not receive a pre-test. So in that case also one group may be the experimental group and another one may be, the next group may be the controlling group, right? So altogether we have 4 groups here. So it will be quite complex than the previous two, right? So all these 4 groups receive either the experimental treatment or no treatments, right? No treatment means that is control group. And then we can have a good analytical part, right? So this design is really helpful in order to identify if the pretest itself has an impact on the results, and it will provide more analytical, more analysis by controlling, for more potential pretest effects as well. We can have a good analytical part, right? We can conduct a thorough analysis when it comes to Solomon 4 group design because we are combining pretest and the post-test control group here. So it is a complex one and it is a time-consuming one, right? So here we have randomly selected experimental group A and randomly selected the control group A, and those 2 groups receive the pre-test. And we select experimental group B and a control group B who didn't receive any pre-test, right? We didn't apply pre-test for those 2. And for this part, we apply the intervention, and for this part, we don't apply the intervention. We use the traditional method, right? And after certain time period, we again conduct a post-test and analyze. So it is a quite complex one and a time-consuming one, but we can analyze, we can identify more, a thorough analysis and in-depth analysis can be done because the groups, it is a combination of a combination between post-test and the pre-test post-test control group. So we can assess the impact of the pre-test and the treatment independently as well when it comes to Solomon 4 group design, right? So that is the difference between those 3 types of designing part, right? So you can apply this knowledge as well when you conduct your research. So here, so last week also I showed you. I have added few links where you can directly download the papers, right, for the case study and the case control, observational study, experimental study, and so on. I have just added the Google Scholar links, so you can, and the other links as well. You can download them. I think I uploaded them on LMS as well. I can't remember it. I will check. Anyways, you can use this links and download just to get good idea about how the experimental design works, how the case studies work, how the case control studies work, how the observational studies work, right? So you have to read more to get the idea, right? Because in the class we can't give, yeah, we can't tell everything here, right? You had to do self studies, you had to refer different you have to find out different research papers as well, right? In terms of the case studies, observational, experimental, so whatever the methods we discuss, even for the qualitative and quantitative studies, try to find papers and read to get the idea, to get the way of conducting that type of research. So that is how we learn actually, right? So yes, so that is about the lesson 2. Any questions up to this point, or else we can move to the third lesson as well. Okay, since you don't have any questions, I will upload this material on LMS. Then okay, so lesson 3 is about the research ethics. So here actually we are trying to discuss how the research ethics comes into the topic when it comes to engineering, and especially when we are dealing with research work like academia, how the research ethics become really important. So we will discuss that one under this lesson. So this is a very short lesson. Okay, so up to now, we have completed the academic writing, literature review, referencing part, and the research methodologies, qualitative, quantitative research methods as well. And then we have the proposal writing part. So after the New Year vacation, I will start the proposal writing part, because I think you should submit a proposal as well, research proposal. So before that, we will finish this proposal writing one. So today we will discuss about the research ethics, right? So under research ethics, what we do is sometimes we feel like, okay, research ethics is about, let's say the compliance issues, right? Sometimes we feel like that. Okay, ethics means how we stick to the compliance related things. But it goes beyond of that when it comes to the research studies or academia. And also when it comes to the engineering field, when it comes to the other field as well, ethics play a major role, and it play a different role. It goes beyond the compliance issues, right? So we have to think about many more aspects when it comes to ethical assessment in engineering field, right? So this is focused um, in 20th century, right? Especially with the rise of the technology, because a new branch of the philosophy was formed called ethics of the technology in terms of the technological development happened, right? Start with the 20th century. So that means people started thinking seriously about how the technology affect the people, right? And we as human beings, we always try to think seriously about how the technology affect the society, how the technology affect the people, and how, even the environment as well. How it affect the environment at large, how it affect the community at large. So we think about this technological improvement very seriously, right? And also, um, it expanded in between different field, like subfield, let's say. So that may include the computer ethics, right? Nano related studies and the robotics, AI generated things. So it goes here and there, right, into the different subfields. You might have heard the computer ethics, these nano ethics, right? The robotic ethics, right? When you practically work in business world and the engineering field, you may heard these terms. Ethics, engineering ethics, robotic related ethics, right? Nano ethics. There are many more ethics. So these are very smaller areas that deal with the ethical issues related to each type of technologies they are using. When it comes to the computer related field, so they are talking about the ethics related to the technology they are using. When it comes to nanoethics, they are talking about the ethics related to the nanotechnology. When it comes to the engineering field, you are talking about the ethics related to the engineering field, right? For an example, it is okay for, I mean, we are using the robotics now. Nowadays, the robotics and the AI are the emerging things now, emerging technology. So we have to think about, okay, is it okay to replace the human beings by the robotics? We have to think about that. What are the drawbacks? And how safe should a computer system would be? How should a robotic should be? Right? We have to think about everything. Although we are dealing with new technology and the AI related things, especially, right? AI is the, the emerging topic now. So we have to think about that one. Although we are applying them in our real world scenarios, right? One of the important thinker in this field is that is a German philosopher named this Hans Jones. You can search, and he wrote about how we need to be responsible with the technology, right? Especially because it can have a long-term effect on the humanity, So that person explained, he wrote about how we need to responsible when we are using the technology, right? And later on, people also started thinking more about the engineering ethics and the other subfield related ethics. So that is a more specific area where we focus on a specific ethical criteria, right? Because it focuses on the choices the engineers make. And it is about, it focus on how likely it is, like how they design something, how they implement something. What about their choices, whether it is safe or not, or whether it is harmful to the environment or not, whether it is harmful to the community or not. So it focuses and it covers a big area when it comes to engineering ethics, right? All of these technology ethics and the engineering ethics, they are connected to something we call research ethics, right? So in the research ethics, everything is there. Technological ethics are there, engineering related ethics are there, and the other different ethical criteria are there. So all together we consider them and we connect them, and then we identify research ethics, right? So that is what we call like research ethic. It is based on how we apply the technological ethics, how we apply the engineering related ethics, how we apply the nanoethics, right? When it comes to academia or research, right? And also you have to be very careful when you conduct a research study, right? You should be honest. And you should be very careful when you deal with people, when you collect the data, when you analyze the data, when you use the person's names, that you should be respectful when you are doing the research, right? Especially when it is when it involves with the people, or when it involves with the environment. So you should be very respectful and you should be very careful, because you are dealing with human beings and the environment at large, and you are introducing something to the community. So they will use it, they will apply it in their day-to-day activities. So in each and every aspect you are doing when you conduct a research, you should follow these ethics, right? And when we are discussing this engineering ethics, institutionalization happens when it comes to engineering ethics, right? So in 1970 or something, most of the countries started creating some national professional bodies, right? National professional ethical codes for the engineers, right? They form some professional bodies, professional rules, professional codes for the engineers, right? So that means there were official rules and official guidelines to help the engineers to behave responsible and make some right decisions in their work, right? There are some engineering, specific engineering related ethics, codes. We say it like engineering or professional ethical codes for the engineers, right? That may be regarding safety, that may be regarding human rights safety, employee safety, or environmental safety, right? There are rules and regulations, guidelines are there, which guide the engineers to professionally perform their job and to take the responsibility as well when they are taking decisions. So then both national and the international bodies, national and the international organization introduced different laws and standards related to the health and safety and the environmental effect as well. So that rules are really important because engineers in engineering, their works can affect the people's safety and also the environmental safety as well. So engineers need to follow these legal and ethical standards, at least to protect the public, at least to protect the environment, at least to protect their surroundings, community, right? You should be very careful and you should apply, you should follow those legal rules and the ethical criteria, ethical standards. And later on in 1980 and 1990, um, ethics in technology became a very big and essential topic, right, in the academic world, right? We had these different areas, but technology, so that is the major topic nowadays also, right? So ethics in technology became a very critical thing and a big role, big topic when it comes to academia after these 1980s. Right? Many international journals and the conferences, they were started to talk about the ethical issues in engineering and technology when it comes to academia. So that platform helped to help the researchers and the professional bodies to share their ideas, right? To discuss the problems and learn from others which related to the ethical side, right? So moving on to the research ethics. So this is the most important part, right? So research ethics is about being honest and being respectful when you conduct a research. So as a researcher, you must be honest in how you collect the data and how you report the results, right? How you analyze the data, how you develop your final outcome, how final report, and how you treat the people or participants who engage with your study, right? Involved in your research, and how you respect, how you treat how you acknowledge the other researchers' works when it comes to your research work. So that is all what we identify as research ethics, right? We also need to respect the rights and the dignity of all the individuals who are affected by our study. That may be your community, that may be your work colleagues, that may be our country at large, that may be the world at large. So we also respect the rights and the dignity of all the individuals who get the who experience the outcomes of our study. So when we apply this research ethic during our research, we should apply the research ethic during all the stages of our research, right? When we plan the research, when we conduct it, when we publish it, especially, right? When we share the results, when we analyze the data, we in all the aspects of our research, in all the processes or steps in our research, we have to apply this research ethics. It is not just about the final report. It is all about every step of your process, right? It is not only about how you publish it ethically. It is all about how you conduct your research, right? And how you explain your outcomes to the community. And when it comes to these research ethics, you can see here, we had to consider these three, right? Ethics within the research community, protection of the participants, the value and the role of research in society. We have to think about these three things mainly when it comes to research ethics, right? Ethics within the research community. What is mean by that? So it means researchers should not lie and they should not cheat on their works. And special thing is they should not steal the others' works as well. Right? So they should give a credit where it's due and they should follow proper method as well when the researchers conduct a research study. And the B part is protection of the participants. When the people are involved in a research, we must protect them, right? We must protect their privacy because we are dealing with their data, right? Although we are distributing a small Google form and collect some survey data, so we are dealing with data. We are dealing with their data. So we have to protect their privacy, right? Although when you are going to collect the data from the individuals, you have to get their permissions. You can't directly, you can't force anyone to fill your Google forms or take place in your research. You can't force anyone. You have to give an informed consent before you conduct your research involving, and get the involvement of, let's say in your research study, you distribute a Google form and a questionnaire, online questionnaire, let's say, to collect the data. And before you start the questions, right, you have seen this, before we start the questions, we add a small description explaining who we are and explaining where we are working, explaining where we are studying, and what is the purpose of collecting the data and how we are going to apply them, right? And you should explain about the data security as well. And you should ensure that you don't track their personal and there are some Google forms, the online surveys, online questionnaires, we have to add our email address. But um, most of the online questionnaires, online surveys, they don't collect the email addresses. So why is that? Just to protect the participants' privacy, right? And once we read the description, we as individuals, we can decide whether we fill it or not. We can't force anyone to fill our questionnaires, right? We can't force any workers to take place in our one-to-one discussions. That is how we practice the ethics when it comes to academia and this research side, right? You have to keep their information very private, right? Confidential data are there, no? When we are dealing with human beings, especially, right? We have some confidential data. So you have to protect them. You have to keep them private. Although you are using them for your study, you should be very careful when you are going for a publication, right? Without having an informed consent or a permission, you can't publish at least a name, right? You have to make sure that they are not harmed in any way throughout your research process and after your research as well. Right? That happens. You should be very careful when you are going to publish it. Because you are publishing it means anyone can refer it. So ඔයා කාගේ permission එකක් නැතුව ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ නමුයි යාළගේ details උයි ඒගොල්ලන්ට තියෙන ලෙඩයි ඔක්කොම ටික දාලා තිබ්බොත් එහෙම ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ privacy එකට ඒක ලොකු damage එකක්. මොකද අපි අනිත් අයගේ research උත් refer කරනවානේ අපි literature එක ලියන්න අපිට study කරන්න. එතකොට අපි ඒ වගේ දේවල් publish කරලා තිබ්බොත් ඒව තව කෙනෙක්ට refer කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඔගොල්ලෝ publish කරලා තියෙන දේවල් මට refer කරන්න පුළුවන්. So we should be very careful when you are publishing a research. So ethics should be there, right? And the value and role of the research in society. So research should be useful one. And your research should be a meaningful one. Otherwise, it is like a time wasting. right? You should help to solve some problems or some, let's say, some needs that are not met earlier, that have not met earlier. You can find out some solutions. And if you identify any problems, you can solve them. You can improve the knowledge as well, right? You should give the benefit to the society in a positive way when you are conducting a research, right? It should be a very meaningful one. Your society, right, the community that you are going to introduce it should get the benefit in a positive way. It is not just about a personal gain, right? Of course, through conducting once completing a research study, we can gain our personal goals. We can achieve our personal goals, and our personal gains are there when we conduct a research, right? For an example, you are doing undergraduate research. So you have your personal plans, personal gains are there. Obviously, you can get it. But other than that, your research work should be a meaningful one, which give the benefit to the society in a positive way. That may be a simple method introduction, that may be a machinery development, that may be any development or any concept development or whatever the things you are doing, right? You can, under research, you can do any developments as well, right? Engineer students, right? You can do a development, right? In computer science, we don't do a, although we are doing a qualitative and quantitative study, so they develop a system, they develop some methods, some systems they develop now. And later on, they convert it to a research report or thesis report. And you also can conduct a development as well. You can do a development if you can. If you have the capability and the capacity, you can do it, and you can give a meaningful output at the end of your study. That is also an ethic. අපිටත් වැඩක් නැති society එකටත් වැඩක් නැති එකක් කරලා වැඩක් නැහැ. Right? It should be a meaningful one, because the society and the students and the other researchers, everyone will refer to your study, right? And it should be a positive aspect towards the environment and the society, right? In any area, you should be, give a meaningful output. So when it comes to these research ethics, there are a few objectives, right? So mainly we can identify 3 objectives of research ethics: to protect the participant, society, resources, and the researcher. And the second one is to ensure the accuracy of the scientific knowledge. Third one is to protect the intellectual property right. Right? So those are the 3 major objectives we have when it comes to the research ethics, right? So we have to protect our participants, we have to ensure the accuracy of the scientific knowledge, and if we use some intellectual and the property, we have to protect the rights, right? So we will discuss these 3 in detail. So moving on to the first one, protection of the participants, society, resources, and the research itself. So when it comes to this research ethics, our major objective, our major goal is to protect our participants, right? We have to protect everyone who involved in our study, who involved in our research. So that may include the participants, or maybe the researchers, maybe the society, maybe the co-authors, right? Maybe the research the resources like the money, the time and the data you use, right? This is not only about the person. You should think about the resources you are using. You have to protect them, right? First of all, what we have to do is we have to protect our participants from any harm that can be happen throughout our study, right? So that may be a physical harm, that may be emotional harm, that may be a psychological harm, right? We have to protect our participant from that type of harm, right? We also need to show some sort of respect, right? Especially for their privacy and the confidentiality. We have to respect their privacy. We have to respect their confidentiality. We have to keep their identity, and we have to keep their personal information very safe. Although we are using them for our study, we have to keep them very confidential. and very safe. That information should be safe and private. You can't publish them. You can apply them in your study, but you can publish the raw data. There are some cases we have to show the raw data, but without having permissions and the informed consent, you can't do anything, right? You can do, but that is not an ethical practice. So, and another thing is we must get the informed consent, as I earlier told you, from the participants who are involved with your study, right? So you have to explain the research clearly to them before you are going to discuss with them, before you are going to distribute a questionnaire, before you are going to have a one-to-one discussion with the participants. You have to clearly explain, okay, what is happening in this research, why you are conducting in this research, right? What are the intended outcome, what you are going to analyze to this research, right? While collecting the data from that individual, you have to explain them clearly, right? You have to let them decide if they want to take part or not without having any pressure, right? You can't give money and ask them to fill your questionnaire, right? You can't give some benefits, mutual benefits, and ask them to fill the questionnaire and participate for the one-to-one discussion, let's say. You can't do that one, right? So we should be very serious when we are dealing with human beings, right? And we must avoid some, you know, doing some pressures and forcing the individuals, right? As I earlier told you, we can't force anyone to join the research, right? We had to avoid, undue inducement, which means offering too much of a reward that could make someone agree when they normally wouldn't, right? You can't pay money, you can't send them money. That could make someone agree with your study when they normally don't do, right? You can't do it, right? And personal pressures cannot be done. Although you are doing a discussion or a questionnaire or whatever the things you are doing, you can't give a pressure for the persons who are taking place in your study, right? Um, and also another thing is, additionally, you should explain them the risk and the ethical criterias and everything, right? As much as possible, you have to let them know, right? So if you offer a poor person a large amount of money, so they might make them, ignore the risk factors and they will take place in your study. Let's say you are going to test a new medical test or something. Let's say you are going to apply some new manufacturing method or something. But there is a risk, no? We don't know whether it will be successful or not. So you have to explain the risk, right? If you find out a very poor person in your manufacturing line, assembly line, and if you offer them a large amount of reward or money, so they might ignore the risk and they will take place in your study. You don't do it, right? That is not a good ethical practice. And we also should protect the vulnerable groups as well, right? So those are the people who may not be able to protect themselves, right? Like children and the people with disabilities and some elderly persons, so they can't protect themselves, right? Individually. So those are the vulnerable groups we have. Right? There are some cases we have to get the participation of that vulnerable groups, but when we conduct research, um, we should avoid that type of vulnerable groups, right? If we have a special case, we can study, but otherwise, we had to avoid using vulnerable groups, vulnerable persons for our studies, right? But if it is regarding the disabilities or if it is regarding the children, of course, we have to use them, but it should be in an ethical way. We must not take the advantage of them in our research, although they are vulnerable person, although they are disability person, although they are, let's say, elderly person, we can't get the advantage of those persons to conduct our study, right? We can get the help, we can get the participation, but in an ethical way, right? If we are going to study, let's say, apply, this happens when it comes to social science related one studies, right? Sometimes they check the kindergarten effectiveness of learning platforms or learning methods, start teaching and learning practices in kindergarten, or let's say අපි කියන්නේ Montessori ළමයිගේ කොහොමද study ඒගොල්ලෝගේ behaviors කොහොමද කියලා study කරනවා, right? And the teaching and learning practices in grade let's say 1 to 4 or something. So they are small children, small kids. So you can't apply anything or you can't discuss with those small kids without having the permissions of their parents, right? Of course, if you are using a school, you have to get the permissions of that certain principals or the teachers or whatever the ethical bodies are there. You have to get the permission, responsible bodies. And other than that, especially if you are taking some data from kids, right? If you are taking some data from kids, children in a school, you have to get the permission from their parents. Without having permissions, you can't even discuss with the children, right? Although you get the permission from principals, without informing the parents, you can't collect the information. So that is how the ethics comes into the topic. It happens in the engineering field as well. Right? When you are going to apply a new manufacturing method, a new assembly line process into your organization, you have to explain them. You have to, before you apply it, you have to explain them. Right? That risk factor is there, these type of errors are there, these type of issues can be happen, this type of risk is there, and these are the benefits that we can gain through. You have to explain them clearly to your employees. So that is how ethically we do the practices, right? When it comes to research as said, same thing happen, right? You can't get the advantage of any kind of vulnerable persons or any kind of kids, disability persons, or any individuals who are taking place in your study. And another major point is linked with the ethics, you should avoid wasting resources. That is also ethics, right? We must use the time and our money and our material in a wise manner. Right? We have to wisely use them. We have to utilize them, not just to do the research, right? We are doing a research for some purpose. No, it is not for fun. So we have to have a proper goal, right? So we had to avoid that resource usage and we had to minimize the wastages when it comes to time, money, and material, as we are not doing a fun work or fun activity, right? Conducting a research is a fun, right? It is, somewhat differ than we are studying in a class and doing exam. It is differ than that. Because we are doing some studies, self-studies are done, some testings we do, right? We have to discuss with the individuals. We have to go to the society and discuss and find out the data. So it is a very interactive one and interesting process. Right? පටන් ගද්දිම එපා කරගන්න එපා රිසර්ච් එකක් කරන එක. එතකොට නම් එපා වෙනවා කරන්න. Right? පටන් ගද්දිම බෑ හිතිලා ප්‍රොපෝසල් එක දෙනකොටම ෆෙඩ් අප් වුණොත් නම් කරගෙන යන්න නම් අමාරුයි. එහෙම නැත්නම් රිසර්ච් එකක් ආසාවෙන් ඔයාලා ආසාවෙන් තෝරගන්න ටොපික් එකක් තියෙන්නේ. මම කිව්වා ඔයාලා ටොපික් එකක් තෝරගන්නකොට ඉන්ටරෙස්ටිං ටොපික් එකක් තෝරගන්න. මෙකැනිකල් ඉන්ජිනියරින් පැත්තෙන් නම් ඉන්ටරෙස්ටිං ඒරියා එකක් ඔයාට කරගෙන යන ආස හිතෙන ඒරියා එකක් තෝරගන්න. ඔයා ආස නැති දැන් ඉන්ජිනියරින් ළමයෙක් මෙඩිකල් සයන්ස් එකක් තෝරගත්ත කියලා අපිට ඒක කන්ටිනියු කරන්න බෑ. right? අපිට පුළුවන් දේ අපිට කරගෙන යන්න ෆැසිලිටිස් තියෙන අපේ බෑග්ග්‍රවුන්ඩ් එකෙන් කරන්න පුළුවන් අපිට තියෙන ටයිම් ෆ්‍රේම් එකෙන් කරන්න පුළුවන් අපිට ඉන්ටරෙස්ටිං ටොපික් එකක් තෝරගන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට අපිට ආසාවෙන් ඒක කන්ටිනියු කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? Although we are facing some limitations, of course, challenges may be there when we start the process. Research, right? Initially, we have a good plan. But the problem is when we practically start our process, when we submit a proposal, we have a good plan and we have some intended outcomes. We have a big, beautiful picture about our research. But practically, when we practically implement it and when we practically start our research, we may find out so many limitations and challenges. That is the normal situation, right? So you should be able to face those things as well. But if you have an interest to do that study, if you have an interest, a good interest to regarding that selected area or a topic, of course, you can continue it without having a big effort, right? Some sort of effort should be there, but without having over stress, right? Overburden, you can do it, right? Yes. So, other thing is we have to balance the risk and the benefits as well, right? And the risk in any research should be as low as possible, right? And the potential benefits of your study should be higher than the risk. So it is not just for the researcher, but for the society, that should be same, right? The risk should be minimum and the benefit should be higher than the risk, right? So that is how actually we practice the, we protect the participants in terms of the research ethics, right? And second one is ensuring accuracy of the scientific knowledge. So what is mean by that? Ensuring accuracy of the scientific knowledge. So most importantly, our research must be scientifically valid, right? Our process, our research must be scientifically strong one and scientifically valid one. It should be methodologically strong, right? We must follow a proper research method step by step without taking shortcuts. Don't search for shortcuts, right? When you are conducting a research, right? If you have to use 50 participants for your study, do it, right? You don't search for shortcuts. If you have to conduct 2 tests, let's say you have to conduct 3 to 5 testing part under experimental study, let's say. So do it, try to do it. Don't search for shortcuts, right? The scientific validity should be there and it should be a methodologically strong one, right? We also need to be, fair in selecting participants as well, right? That means we should have a clear inclusion and the exclusion criteria when we select the participants. We must choose the right number of participants to make sure that our results truly reflects to the larger population, right? That is why the sampling techniques are important. In terms of the population you have, let's say you are having 500 employees and you are going to analyze, let's say something through that population. And out of population, 500 population, you have to select right number of participants to study, right? Otherwise, you can't convert that outcome to your large population. If you only choose a very few people, that results might not be accurate for everyone else in your population. Let's say you have 500 employees and you are going to assess some factors affecting employee productivity, let's say. If you select 10 employees out of 500 and study, so that will not be the accurate one. It will give some sort of outcome, but that will not be, generalizable or accurate for the others in the population. Because compared to the population, your selected sample is very few, 10 employees. That is not enough, right? At least it should be greater than 20 or 30. But it depends on the population we have. And it depends on the study we are conducting, right? It depends on many criteria. But 500ක් විතර එම්ප්ලොයිස්ලා ඉන්න තැනක එම්ප්ලොයිස්ලා 5 දෙනෙක් විතර තෝරගෙන ස්ටඩි එකක් කරලා අපිට අවුට්කම් එකක් ගන්න බෑ. ඒක වැරදි. Right? We should select the participants very carefully and we can use some scientific methods as well to select the participants, number of participants for our study. Right? And we should always clearly state our research method. Right? What is the method we are using? So that will help the other researchers in the near future as well, because they will refer your research. If they want to repeat and if they want to extend your research, they can understand, okay, what we have done regarding our publication, right? The research method should be clearly stated, right, when it comes to research ethics. And another very important thing is we should never do these things, right? We should never omit in the data. We should never falsify the data. We should never modify our data, right? So that is a big error we are doing. That is a big error most of the students are doing, right? If there is a mistake, we must report it accurately, right? If there is some, let's say when we practically collect the data and when we practically get the analytical part and the outcome, sometimes we can't get the intended outcome, right? So you should not be, don't omit any data or no, don't modify that. There are some special cases where we have to, omit the data in order to get them into in a practical scenario. There are some special cases where we allow to avoid some one or two data just to, arrange our data accordingly and to identify the patterns as well, relationships. But other than that, don't omit data, don't falsify or modify the data, right? ඔයාගේ outcome එක ගන්න data modify කරන්න නම් එපා. State whatever the outcomes you receive. That is okay. Because we are not Einsteins, no. Right? We can't get 100% correct outcomes at the end of our study. Right? When we practically apply as students, right? When you practically apply them, sometimes errors can be happen. Mistakes, there may be mistakes, but report it carefully, right? You should be able to address them carefully in your report, right? Some hidden errors may be there, which will, highly affected to your final outcomes. Try to identify them and clearly state them. Because hiding errors is a big error, right? Hiding errors is another big issue. If you hide errors that happen in your study, that will harm to the others who rely on your study, who rely on your research, right? Let's say regarding health and safety. Let's say you are going to introduce a machine, right? A big machine, right? Let's say you are going to introduce a cutting machine. So it is not an easy work, right? So you are going to introduce a new technological cutting machine and you identify that, okay, there is something is going wrong with this machine and the electrical things, and you hide them. You know it and you hide them. So it is not a good thing because it will be a harmful item for the community because your community will use it, right? Don't hide anything you identify in your study, right? You can identify many factors as well, right? Initially, we don't know like these type of factors are there, but once we continue study, we can identify other factors, other affections as well. So properly state them, right? Properly report them, right? So that will be a good practice when you conduct a research ethics. When you conduct a research, right? So we must, and another thing is we must use only our actual data, right? Any fake data, don't use any fake data, right? Don't develop some fake data set and analyze it and put it on your report and show, right? You can't do it, but that is not an ethical practice. No one will come and, collect, come and get you into the jail, right? No one will do it, but you should be ethical, right? You should be follow, ethically strong, right? You can't find someone else data set and analyze it and put it in your thesis report and submit it. Sometimes we can't even identify. There are some cases we can identify, but there are some cases we can't even identify. And you can also get a good mark. That happens, right? That happens when it comes to real world scenario. But you should be ethical, right? You should be ethical and ethically strong when you conduct your research, right? Otherwise, you know that you have done a fake work. You have copied someone else's idea, right? You know that you know that what you have done in your study, right? So you should only deal with actual data for your study, which you collected throughout your study, right? Using someone else's data or making up the numbers is not ethical. Also, we should be aware of any conflicts and any conflicts of the interest as well. For an example, if we are paid by a company that might benefit from our research, we must declare and we must give that benefit openly. If your company is sponsoring you to conduct a research, so you should declare it openly, right? You should give them the benefit of your study. If they are paying you and to conduct a research, there are some research and development departments, right? Nowadays, in most of the companies, there are specific research and development department. So company pay them to do some research and identify new interventions. So they should openly declare them, right? And after the research, we should keep the data and the material safely for few years, right? So others can access it if needed, or if questions arise, they can refer it, right? So when you conduct a research, let's say you collected 1,000 data, right? And you put it on an Excel sheet or something and you analyze it using some software, let's say SPSS or ROS, whatever the systems you can use, softwares, and you have to store and you have to keep them safely, that materials, and if you use any questionnaires, you have to store them carefully. You have to keep them safely for few years, let's say 2 to 3 years, let's say at least. So if any questions arise, right, you can access them again. So others also can access them if needed, right? And we should never publish the papers based on some incomplete research, right? And based on only on the assumptions and the assumed data, assumed results, we cannot publish a research paper. If we are going to publish a research paper, it should be based on complete research, right? You can simply use ChatGPT and write down anything, but that is not a complete work, right? Even you don't know what is happening in your research, right? Of course, you can apply the AI related knowledge, right? Right? Even to write the literature review, even to write the abstract, even to write the introduction part, even to analyze the data, you can use the AI tools. Even ChatGPT, let's say, you can apply that knowledge, but that is not the ethical practice, right? That is not a complete work. You should do everything. You can refer the sources. You can refer the sources. You can refer to some search engines and search whatever the things you can do, but your work should be an individual and a valid work, a strong work, and a complete work, right? ඔය මොනවා use කරා ඔයා දැනගන්න ඕනේ ඔයාගේ ස්ටඩි එකේ මොකක්ද වෙන්නේ, ඔයා ඒ ටෙස්ට් ටික හරියට කරන්න ඕනේ, ලැබ් ටෙස්ට් එකක් තියෙනවනේ ඒක කරන්න ඕනේ, බොරුවට data දාලා ඒක ගෙනල්ලා පෙන්නුවා කියලා වැඩක් නැහැ, right? ඔයාගේ result එක එනකම් බොරුවට data එහා මෙහා කරලා ඒක ගෙනාවා කියලා වැඩක් නැහැ, right? But most of the students are doing this type of thing. That is why I'm telling, right? You can't do it, but that is not the ethical practice. Even you can't sleep, right? Once you do a false work and once you submit a fake work, you can't even sleep because you know that what you have done in your research, right? And another thing is, before the publication, if you are going to do publications, our research work, our work should be reviewed independently by someone else, right? Who is not involved in our study, right? That is why when you are submitting, let's say, abstract or full literature, full review papers, full research articles, so that review committee will assess them independently, and that review parties, right, reviewers, when we select, that reviewers should not take place in your study, right? Reviewers and the individuals should independently assess your publications before they accept them for a publication, right? To make sure that the study is fair and to make sure that the study is free from the bias, someone else who is not taking place in your study should independently review it. So that is done in the research conferences, right? Institutional research conferences. Yes, they do it, right? We also do it. The specific review committee is there, right? More experience and some, expertise persons are there, and they will review your studies, your works independently before they accept your abstract or the full paper for a publication, right? So that is how we practice the ethics in order to assure the accuracy of the scientific knowledge. And then third one is protection of the intellectual and the property right. Right? So what is mean by that? Protection of the intellectual and the property rights. So first of all, we need to understand what is mean by citation and what is mean by authorship and the references. Authorship, let's say, just forget about the references. You should carefully understand, okay, what is mean by authorship. When someone is making some significant contribution to your study, your research, let's say not just helping with some small tasks, but really big involvement is there. If really big involvement is there, and if they involve with your study, doing the scientific work and writing your scientific work, so they deserve to be listed as an author, right? So when you are going to publish it, you should mention them under the authors if there is a big contribution for your study. That is not like we are mentioning the participants, participants who take place in our discussions or something, one-to-one discussions or something. We don't mention it under authors. But there are, if we are doing a group work or something, let's say if some others do some involvement, a big involvement in our scientific work, so they deserve to be an author of our study. Right? So you have to think about that one, right? When you name the authors of your study. And the order of the names of the authors, right? Order of name of the authors, so that should listed accordingly, right? That should reflect how much each person contributed to the study. So based on that, you can order the names. But there are no any restrictions. We will not go into this, okay, what about the contribution and why you are mentioning that name as the first one or second one or so on. We don't check it, but you can, think about their contribution, individual contribution, and you can list the orders as well, or author's name as well. And the first author usually the one who did the most work, right? Who did the most work. So that would be the first author. Also, you must get the permissions before you include someone else's name as an author, right? Before you are adding their name as an author, you should get their permission. Sometimes, although your supervisor support you, they don't like to add their name in your research paper or research book. So you have to get their permission to add their names and let's say their author names under author. You should get their permissions, right? We should never add the names without asking. Although in the under supervision and another thing, when you mention the author's name, right, even in the first page and the acknowledgement or whatever the thing, right, whatever the pages you are mentioning the author's name and let's say your supervisor name, you should be very careful, right? The correct name should be there before you add it. At least ask them for their full name or name with initials. So correct name should be there, right? Without asking, we can't do it, right? Don't do that type of small issues, right? And when we use the ideas and the words and the findings from the someone else work, so we must give them a credit, right? So that means we have to quote them properly, right? We have to mention their names, this is what we call the citation, right? We have to name them, we have to mention their names and the years, and we have to quote their findings properly, including their citations and the end referencing. So that is another way which we can use to give the credibility, right? Not giving the credit is known as a plagiarism, right? So we can reduce that one as well. So that is also comes under the ethics. And even if someone is not an author, but if he or she help in some way, right? For an example, if they assist in collecting the data, and if they gave some useful advices for the, let's say, data collection and the analytical part, you should acknowledge them properly, right? Although they are not comes under the author's name, right? There are some persons who help your study, maybe for the lab test, maybe for the methodological development, maybe for the questionnaire development, right? There are some persons who help you in different ways, right? But we can't quote them as authors. That is the case. So in that case, we have to acknowledge them properly, right? A simple thank can be given in the acknowledgement section just to show the respect for their help, right? It is not like you have to write down 3 to 5 pages to acknowledge, in a long way. Just give a small thank, right? A small respect for their help, even in your acknowledgement, right? Your supervisor and maybe your workplace, maybe your manager, right? So they will help you to continue your study. And they will help you in find out the participants for your study and to conduct some laboratory tests and do some experiments with new machinery development. So you should be, humble, and you should be very, respectful, right? You should respectful, and you can add them add a small tag for those type of individuals and at least under acknowledgement section. And when it comes to this property and the intellectual rights, most important thing is if you sign any agreement, right? Here we are using some intellectuals and property rights. We are talking about the property right. So if we sign any agreement, right? For an example, non-disclosure agreements or so on. If we sign any agreements or any contract that restrict sharing the information, sharing the company name or other things, we must strictly follow those rules. Right? There are some companies who allow you to collect the data and who allow you to conduct the research in their study, in their workplace, but they strictly make you aware that you are not allowed to publish their name and the company name and the employee's name and the other details. So if that type of restrictions are there, so you should be very careful. Right? Usually in research studies, although we are doing a case study or something, we had to use some companies, right? Some plants, manufacturing plants itself, we had to use it. But instead of mentioning that name, we add different names like ABC company or something. We don't mention the exact name of the particular company, right? Just to respect for their restrictions and the rules and regulation, right? For a company, they may have their own rules and regulations and standards now. So we should be very respective and respectful, and we should be very careful when we are dealing with those type of data, right? So especially if you sign any agreement or contract, don't miss out it, right? Strictly follow the rules and the guidelines which are mentioned in the agreements or contract. Otherwise, that maybe comes under legal actions. That if you sign any agreement regarding this property right, or if you sign any contract with some, let's say, plant or a manufacturing plant or a company, right? And once you are going to publish your paper, let's say mistakenly you have mentioned their name and the serious confidential data. So if they quote that type of issues, they can take legal action because you have signed an agreement or a contract. So before you are going to publish your paper, right, read the whole paper, right? At least ask your friend to read the paper, right? Proofreading should be done, right? That proofreading should be done, right? That proofreading can be done individually, right, by yourself, and you can ask your supervisor, you can ask your work colleague, you can ask your other subordinates as well. And there are some professional bodies who are doing proofread, right? So you can give your report, give your thesis report or research report to that type of professionals who are engaging with the professional should be there, right? නැතුව අපි අම්මට හරි තාත්තට හරි දුන්නා කියලා ඒගොල්ලන්ට අපේ රිසර්ච් රිපෝට් එකක් කියවලා ඒකේ තියෙන errors තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ, right? So professionals should be there who are having some experiences, so they can read your research, right? Once we read the research report, we can identify if we have mentioned any, confidential data or any company name, we can identify it. Sometimes individual, when we write down the research, because we have to we read our own report more than 20 to 30 times before we submit our report. So at the end of certain time period, we are familiar with the errors as well. So we may miss them. So that is why proofreading is very important, especially when you are going to submit a research for a publication. So you should be very careful, because especially when you write an agreement, when you sign an agreement or a contract, that rules and regulations and the standards should be strictly followed by yourself. Breaking such type of agreement is not only unethical practice, it is also caught under the legal problem. That is the case, right? Sometimes we can't even identify that you have mentioned a company name, but it is not only an unethical practice, it is also comes under legal problem, legal issue, compliance issue. So that will be a big problem when it comes to legal side, right? So you should be very careful. Although they are giving, if a company give you a chance to conduct your research in their organization, in their workplace, that is a great thing, right? There are some companies who are not allowed to at least to distribute a questionnaire. So if your company allow you to conduct such type of a research, and if they help you, you should be, respect, and you should respect them while not sharing their critical and their company name and the confidential information as well. Because through a research, not only the positive things, negative things we discover now. So if we quote a name of a particular company, and if we add some bad reviews and some drawbacks and negative things under that company name, see how big the problem is. So that will be harmful for their company name and the reputation. So don't play with company names and the individual's names and the individual privacy and the company's confidential data. Don't play with them. You can apply them. If you have the permission, you can use it. But if you don't have the permission, you can't even use it. Right? So everything is what these type of things is what we mean by ethics, right? Research ethics. Then when it comes to the research writing, right? Scientific research. So these are the major scientific research misconducting areas, right? So we called it as FFP criteria, right? Try to remember that one, FFP criteria. So in each of these letters, FFP, it explains 3 scientific research misconducting criteria. Falsification, fabrication, and the plagiarism is there. Fabrication by F, falsification by F, and the plagiarism by P. So these 3 are the major research misconducting areas, right? So all the other small parts, we can categorize them under these 3 criteria. Shall we take a small break, 5 minutes, and I will start with this FFP model. Okay, so moving on to these research misconducting areas. So first one is fabrication. Fabrication means the creation of non-existence data and the results and the act of recording and reporting them. So that is what we mean by fabrication. So it is where we make up our data and the results, right? So researcher didn't actually do the experiment, but they write the fake results as they are real data. So it comes under fabrication, right? So this is a big lie actually when it comes to research. And it is very dangerous because others may use this fake data in their research work and in their work as well, in their studies as well. So it is very serious issue if you fabricate your data, right? Let's say a student is doing a survey and he or she has some intended outcomes now, but to get that intended outcome, we need to have some sort of data, right? So, but the issue is only few people may respond to your questionnaire, let's say. So instead of collecting more responses, that particular student may try to make up the fake answers and make up the fake data, right, to reach their required number of participants. So they include these fake responses in their reports and in their studies if they were real, as they are real, right? So that is comes under fabrication. So it is because no real data was collected, right? Due to that one, we try to fabricate data. We try to add some new data, right? Which are not really consist in our data collection part, right? Sometimes we need to collect 100 data, 100 responses, but at the end of the data collection part, we have only received, let's say, 50 responses. So there is a balance for 50 responses. So instead of trying to collect that balance of 50 responses, we try to make up the data, right? We try to add some fake data, fake responses by ourselves. Or else we ask our friend to fill the questionnaire and try to increase our number of responses, right? So we completely invented the data when it comes to fabrication. So that is not a good thing, right? So those are not the real data. So if we fail to collect the real data, we try to do this fabrication. And the falsification, that is second one. The manipulation of the research material, equipment, or the processes for omitting the data and the results so that the research is not accurately represented in research record. So it is little different than the falsification. Under falsification, what we do is we try to change our data and the results based on our purpose. In the fabrication, we make up the data, right? We show some non-existence data. right? අපේ data set එකේ අපිට collect කරගන්න බැරි වුණ data ටිකකුත් අපි එතන represent කරනවා. බොරු data ටිකක් දානවා. right? Falsification means we try to change the data, right? That may be done due to the purpose of our study, right? For an example, if the actual results is different from what the researcher wanted to prove, so they might change the data and just to show it look like a better outcome, they try to change the data. So as per their purpose, they try to change their idea. They change the data. That is what we mean by falsification, right? So this is also a cheating criteria actually, right? Which lead to have some wrong conclusion at the end of the study. It's not a good work, right? The researchers collect some results from an experiment, let's say. So, but some of the results don't support their hypothesis. And at the end of the analytical part, we can't, our all hypothesis, we have to reject over, let's say initially we have 5 variables, 5 independent variable and 1 dependent variable. And at the end of the study, we are going to analyze the relationship between those two and the how the independent variable affect the dependent variable. And at the end of the study, unfortunately, we find that any of the founded independent variables are not influenced, and the dependent variable is not influenced by any of the variables you identify. So that means at the end of the study, you can't even prove your intended outcome. No? So based on the collected results, right, you can't show what you want to show at the end of the study. That means very simply, you did not receive a good result at the end of the study. So in that case, you try to do these changes and the falsification. Right? So sometimes you delete the bad results and only include the positive and the good results and change your data in order to get the outcomes and prove your intended outcome. So that is what we mean by falsification. So this is because the real data is being changed or hidden just to look it better than the real situation. This is also an ethical issue and a research misconducting area. Right? Fabrication, falsification. Sometimes to get the, identify the different patterns or something, we try to omit the data and we have to change some materials we have used, right? We have to change the equipment, we have to manipulate the data we have. So that is called under falsification. But most of the students, they try to do these issues, right? Right, we know it because when you as students practically do it, right? Initially, you have a good plan, but at the end of the day, once you complete the analytical part, you only receive, let's say, bad outcomes, not the better one. So you feel bad, and to avoid that feeling and to, submit a good report with good outcomes, you try to manipulate data and even you try to add some non-existence data as well, right? Just to satisfy yourself and get a good mark. But we don't allow you to do it, right? Sometimes there are some cases because the students are very, technologically strong, no? So they know the way of doing this type of cheating when they are doing assignments, when they are doing research works, right? Sometimes even the reviewers can't find out those issues because you are really experts in that cheating areas, right? So there, but I'm not saying like all the students are doing the same things. Most of the students try to do their best in their research and the assignments and whatever things they are doing. So, but on the other hand, there are few persons who are trying to do this fabrication and the falsification. That is not a good work. You can do it, right? We will, only thing is if we find out that issues, we will, deduct marks and we will take some actions. Otherwise, we will, not put you into the jail. And no one will come and get you into the jail. We will not complain you. We will not go to the police station and complain you, mentioning that you have done a research misconducting under fabrication or falsification. We can't do it, right? But ethically, right, even to sleep, freely and with free mind, you should be very, honest when you are doing your research study. Even though you are collecting data, even in your data analytical part, especially, you should be very, honest and be careful, right? Dealing with data. When you deal with data, be careful, right? Because we tend to do this fabrication and the falsification if we find out some errors. That is a normal situation, right? අපිට ඕනි results එක එන්නේ නැතිකොට අපිට හිතෙනවා පොඩක් data වෙනස් කරලා බලන්න. Right? ඒක තමයි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් වෙන දෙයක්. Right? Because we are human beings, no? අපිට ඒ වගේ issues, ඒ වගේ errors වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Fabrication අපිට කරන්න හිතෙනවා. නැති data එකක් දාලා බලන්න හිතෙනවා. අපිට ඕනි pattern එක, අපිට ඕනි relationship එක, model එක අපිට develop කරගන්න බැරිකොට අපි තියෙන data වෙනස් කරන්න බලනවා. අපි තියෙන materials ටික වෙනස් කරලා වෙන මොනවා හරි materials ටිකක් දාලා ඒ outcome එක ගන්න බලනවා. lab test එකක් කරනකොට අපිට ඕනි outcome එක ඒ practical එකකින් එන්නේ නැතිකොට අපි ඒ lab test එකට අපි වෙන මොකක් හරි එකක් දාලා ඒ outcome එක එන්න try කරනවා. outcome එක ගන්න try කරනවා. right? ඒකෙන් අපිට පුළුවන් report එකක් submit කරලා mark එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි එතනින් එහාටත් ඔයා මොනවා හරි වැරදි material එකක් use කළ එක වගේ state කරලා තිබුණොත් report එකේ ඔයා publication එකකට ගියොත් එතනින් එහාටත් මිනිස්සු ඔයාගේ data refer කරනවා. මේ method එක use කරොත් මේ වගේ outcome එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා ඒගොල්ලෝ හිතනවා. So that is not a good thing. Because although you are doing an individual work here, right? After certain time period, if you are going to go for a publication or let's say even in the thesis report, right? At least in the library, we can refer the past research as well. So your juniors and the other students and the community and the other researchers who are trying to do new, research, they will refer to your study. So if you have done this fabrication, the falsification, although you have obtained an A grade, A plus grade for your research, right? So that is not a good work, right? So, and the third one is plagiarism. The appropriation of another person's ideas, processes, results, or words without giving the appropriate credit. We call it as plagiarism, right? So it means you copy someone else's work, right? You copy someone else's ideas and their results, their word, their data without giving them a credit, right? Without acknowledging them. It is like you are stealing something from someone else. That may be a researcher, some other researcher or author. It is like you are stealing their idea. Even if you copy just a sentence or just a diagram from someone else, you must cite it, right? You must add the source name properly. You must cite it properly, right? That may be a small picture, that may be a small diagram, that may be a small, simple sentence, but you have to cite it properly. That is how you avoid this plagiarism, and also you practice the ethics when it comes to research. This plagiarism happens when you are writing the report, right? Especially in the literature, right? There are some cases we have to state exactly what they are saying, and we can't change it. As it is, we have to mention it. But then at the end of the sentence, you can add the citations at least, right? So then it will not come under plagiarism. But එහෙමයි කියලා literature review එකේ ලියන හැම එකටම citations දාලා හැම sentence එකකටම දාලා ඒවා plagiarism එකට එන්නේ නැහැ කියන්න බෑ. හැම වෙලේම try කරන්න sentence එකක් ගත්තත් ඔයාගේ වචනෙන් ලියලා ඒකට අදාළ citation එක දාන්න. එතකොට ඔයාලට කොහොමත්ම ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. Theories, we can't change it. We have to mention it as it is, right? Theory, scientific things, theoretical things, some assumptions, scientific assumptions are there, probability related assumptions, statistic related assumptions are there. We have to mention it as it is. We can't change it. So that is okay, but we have to cite it. We have to mention the source, right? And always try to, although you are writing your introduction and the literature, right? This is where the plagiarism happens, right? Plagiarism code, especially in introduction, because data analysis and the data collection part obviously it is done by yourself now. But most of the time in introduction and the literature, this plagiarism, we can identify these plagiarism issues. Try to, although you are referring to someone else sentences, right? Although they are really important for your study, try to read them, identify the concept, and write them in your own word and give the citation. Right? That is a good word. That is a good practice. Right? And even in the referencing, right? Citation and the referencing, you can acknowledge them, right? If a student copies a big paragraph from a journal article and just copy and paste it in their report without adding even a quotation marks or referencing and the names of the authors under citation, so it comes under plagiarism, right? They present the data as they have done it by themselves. It's not a good thing. You have to give the credibility to the real author. Right? This plagiarism happens because the students took someone else's work and didn't give them a credibility and the credit. right? So these are the major 3 research misconducting areas. So you should be very careful when you deal with these type of, especially in the data collection, data and this fabrication, falsification, usually it happens under your data collection and the data analytical part. If you have done a wrong work under this analytical and the collection part, in your conclusion also, you come up with the wrong conclusion, right? Based on non-existent data. So, what are the advantage of here? We are talking more about the research ethics. No, it is regarding how we write the research and how we protect the employees, how we protect the individuals who participate, how we protect the intellectual property. So many more things we discuss. So what are the benefits we can get to this research ethic? Advantages. So first of all, it helps us to promote the true aim of our study, true aim of our research, right? Because we can use that knowledge to discover new knowledge and solve the problems and even to help the society as well. When we follow the ethical standards, we are doing the research in the right way. So that is a good thing. And usually these ethics build up a good trust between the researcher and the respondent. When the participants feel comfortable, when they feel safe, and when they feel respected, they are more willing to give some honest and accurate answers. If they feel uncomfortable, if they feel like there are no any data security, they will add some fake answers. Right? The accuracy, there is a doubt in terms of the accuracy of the answers. So, on the other hand, if your participants feel like they are safe and respected and they are and there is a big data, high data security, they always try to fill out your questionnaires very honestly and add the accurate answers. So then you can come up with good conclusions and more reliable data collection can be done once you build up that trust between you, researcher, and the respondent. And you can even protect the dignity and the rights and the welfare of the participants as well, right? You can treat um, uh, people with care and respect, right? Especially when the research involves some sensitive topics, especially if you are dealing with vulnerable person, vulnerable individuals. So you can respect them and you can care about them throughout this research ethics. And another benefit is the researcher can have some accountability for their actions. If something is going wrong, people can look into what happened and they can take actions if necessary, right? So this ensure the responsibility of the research work. That is also comes under the research ethics, right? And you can promote the social and the moral values as well, right? Like the honesty and the fairness and the caring about the others. You can foster that culture under research ethics because the values, these type of values are really important, not just in your study, not just in your research, but in life as well. It's really important to consider this from the social values and the moral values, right? And when it comes to the research itself, ethics also help us to support our research goal, right? Ultimate research goal, such as getting the true understanding. We can avoid some mistakes, right? We can stay honest when we conduct our research. So at the end of the study, we can achieve our goal of our study accurately, right? When we stick to the ethical rules, our work also become more meaningful and more respectful, right? A honest and a good outcome, a reliable outcome can be gained while achieving our the research goal through these ethical practices. And under these ethical standards, we can build a strong team working as well, right? We can promote the values like the trust and the responsibility, accountability, right? Mutual respect can be improved, and the fairness can be improved. So ultimately, we can foster the culture of the team working. right? So it is really important when many people are working together on a single project. If you are doing a group project or group research work, so that team working is really important. So ethical standards can be used to build a strong team working culture, right? And even you can gain the public support for your study as well if you follow good research ethics. So, that means, when the people see your research project follows the ethical rules, they are more likely to believe in your study and they will support you, right? It helps you to feel confident and like that the research itself is safe. So they will support you to continue it and get a good outcome. So likewise, we have many more benefits that we can gain through this research ethics, right? And in medical related, in social science related, and in physical science related studies, right? These ethics are really important, right? Although we are dealing with academia, right? Research ethics are really important, right? So that is why I told you that you should avoid you doing falsification, fabrication, and these plagiarisms as well, right? Although you write a report, you should avoid that type of issues. And when it comes to limitations of the research ethics, here actually this research ethics involve some safeguarding participants from the harm now. So we are trying to give a safeguard for the participants from some harmful effect. So physical risk may be there, psychological risk may be there. So we use these research ethics to avoid that type of thing. So physical risk mean it may refer to any potential injuries or any damages, physical damages caused by the study, right? Especially in experimental studies involving physical test, that physical risk is there. And psychological risk, it comes from the topics like that might deal more with the emotional side and like traumatic events or some sensitive events. So psychological risk is there, and and also when we are dealing with this type of research work, right? The social and the legal or maybe the economic risk. So they will involve in some, you know, unintentional release of the personal data. So that can lead to have some, some judgment at the end of the study. So that limitation is there. And another thing is the industrial system. If we use some industrial systems or something, so we may have many more limitations. Although when we are practicing the research ethics, there are some limitation when we deal with industrial systems. So some potential diversions of the resources from the other companies or other systems, and let's say due to having some focus on specific research projects, so we have to deal with some industrial systems. So there are some limitations, although we are trying to practice the research ethics. So researcher self, they must always balance the benefits of their work with the potential risk as well, right? The potential risk to the participants and the society. And that is how they can avoid these limitations and conduct a good research, right? So this is also shows some ethical side, right, in terms of the research and the individuals. And when it comes to engineering ethics, um, World Federation of Engineering Organizations Code of Ethics, or we call it a WFEO model of Code of Ethics. So World Federation of Engineering Organization, WFEO, they have established code of ethics that guide the engineers in maintaining high ethical standards in their professional life, right? So that codes ensure that the engineers prioritize the well-being of the society and the safety of the public, and work with some honesty and the integrity, and they will contribute to the betterment of the society and the environment as well. So they have established some code of ethics for the, especially for the engineers. And in this establishment, they emphasize the responsibility of the engineers to the community and the environmental sustainability, and the importance of the continuous professional development as well. So everything was explained under this WFEO code of ethics, right? So engineers are also, they should avoid some conflicts of interest, and uh, to practice in a manner that reflects the trust in between the society itself, and to protect the sustainability in terms of the environment, right, to protect the safety of the community. So they should, practice their engineering profession in a better way, better manner. So this WFEO mode of code of ethics, it guides the engineers to practice their professional field, right? Professionalism, actually, right? So in this engineering ethics, there are different branches, including some professional bodies, right? Especially focus on the responsibilities and the principles that guide the engineers in their engineering related work. So it help the engineers to make some ethical decisions by providing general principles and some professional code of ethics to conduct, right? Standardized ethical conditions are given. So engineers as professionals, so they can refer to them, and practice their professional life in a better way, right? Because you are also dealing with the uh, community, right? So and the environment as well, right? So this field actually address the different issues and the dilemmas that engineers may face in daily tasks, right? And it will help the engineers to act in a good way, and be responsible and be honest and be beneficial to the society. So there are some ethical review boards as well, right? So before, especially when you are going to introduce, let's say, high technical machines, or and if the medical science researcher is going to introduce a new medical treatment or medical tablet or something, before they are, at least before they are going to start their work, they have to get the approval from that ethical review boards. And in some of the institutions, right, the research, so obviously in research institutions, they do have ethical review committees. And in some of the state universities and other universities as well, not in, not in all the universities, in some of the universities, they do have ethical review committees. So before you are going to, to conduct a, if especially when you are directly deal with the human beings, and if you are directly apply some methods and the testing directly to the human body, so you have to get the proper approval before you are at least starting your study, right? Ethical review board committees are there, so you can write and apply, and once you get the approval only you can start it. So this happen usually when it comes to, big manufacturing part, and the medical science related one, right? If you are dealing with, vulnerable persons also, we have to get the ethical review approvals as well. So there are some professional bodies in terms of that side to help you, right? And this is also engineering's ethics we need to consider, right? And yes, so other than the community, you as engineers, you have to protect the environment as well. The natural and the environmental sustainability, you should protect it and you should promote it, right? So you should ensure that your project benefit both current and the future generations as well. That is how you practice the sustainability. right? So you should always consider the economic and the social side and the environmental impact of your actions or your projects towards the society and towards the environment as well. You should protect the health and the safety and the well-being of the community. And the environment is also really important, right? Especially as engineers, right? Civil engineering students are here. So you should protect your environment, right? When you are developing a building, right? When you are other engineering students as well, when you are developing a machine, even in the disposal part, you should consider about the ethical side, right? So an engineers must ensure that their research design are unbiased and a neutral one, right? ඔයාගේ personal satisfaction එක personal problem එකක් විසඳන්න අපි ලොකු රිසර්ච් එකක් කරලා ඒක කමියුනිටි එකට දෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ලොකු population එකක් දිහා බලලා තමයි obviously සමහර වෙලාවට අපි daily ඒ කියන්නේ අපේ organisation එකේ තියෙන මොකක් හරි problem එකකට solution එකක් generate කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි ඒක generalize කරන්න පුළුවන් ලොකු population එකට. හැබැයි ඒ ස්ටඩි එක unbiased වෙන්න ඕනේ. මොකකටවත් ඔයාගේ personal bias එකක්, ඔයාගේ manager ගේ bias එකක් එහෙම bias තියෙන්න බෑ. අපේ research design එකට, right? So your research design should be unbiased one and a neutral one. So and you should produce the results that are trustworthy, and it should contribute some positive changes toward the community and the environment as well, right? So and this ethics actually in this ethical side, when it comes to engineering, there is a special principle called precautionary principle. So under precautionary principle, it is also linked with the ethics, right? So under precautionary principle, it suggests that any action, if any action or a policy that could pose a risk or some harm, right? Serious harm to the public or serious harm to the environment, that should not be undertaken unless there is a scientific consensus providing that it is a safe path. If you identify that if any of your actions you are taking in your project or a research or your scientific study, it causes to have a risk or a harmful effect to the society, public, and the environment, you should not be able to undertake it and continue it. You have to stop it. Right? That responsibility to prove the safety of the action, it falls on those proposing it and the professional bodies. Right, so that is what we mean by precautionary principles. So try to search and find out some precautionary principle data as well. So I encourage you to search on this one, precautionary principle, because this principle is a good strategy where we use to manage some potential risk, right? When there is not enough scientific evidences or when the evidences is also uncertain, to ensure that we don't take unnecessary risks with the people's health or the environment as well. If we don't have any scientific evidences to prove that, and if we don't have any scientific evidences to prove that the outcomes are good and there are no any harmful effect to the population itself and the environment, we can't continue it. We have to study it, right? And we can't continue it. Right? If we, although there are some scientific evidences to prove that there are no any harmful effect, but that evidences may be sometimes uncertain. But you have to be very careful if you identify that there are any harmful effect to the population and the environment, you can't continue it. You have to stop it. Right? And when it comes to this ethical side in engineering, right, in environmental, right, this technological, right, especially ethics of the technology, right? It focuses on how we apply the developed knowledge, like the nuclear technology, right? Technological ethics in technology, that doesn't mean like the robotics and the AI. right? The nuclear technology and the other, the environmental side, then the robotics, AI things, everything we have to consider here. As the technology advanced, it raised some important questions about their potential risk and the benefits to the society. That is where the research ethics, technology related ethics comes into the topic, right? So when it comes to the nuclear technology, so while it provides some powerful energy, it also poses some risk of the radiations too. And even when we waste the disposal, there are some harmful effect to the environment, right? When we deal with nuclear technology. So we should think about ethics when we are dealing with nuclear technology, how we dispose the materials. What about the risk when it comes to radiations, right? We should think about that, right? What about the potential outputs in nuclear weapons? We should think about that. That is ethics, right? We should protect our population, our community and the environment from that nuclear, although we are applying them and although we can get a powerful energy, we should be very careful, right? Even you are using, when you are using robotics and the AI, so usually robotics can greatly enhance the productivity. But on the other hand, it raises some concerns about the job displacement, right? And the human control over the machine. So we should think about them because dealing with robotics, it is very easy, right? And in terms of the productivity and the efficiency, obviously we can improve them. But the problem is job displacement happen and the human control is also can be happen, right? AI is another emerging thing when it comes to this technical side, right? Because it offers some potential, very vast potential in healthcare and the finance and the engineering and the academia even, right? And the other fields as well, in the medical side as well. But it also raised some ethical issues, especially regarding the privacy and the decision-making bias, right? And even to loss of the jobs due to the automation, because through the robotics and the AI, we are trying to automate the systems. So if we try to automate them, that means loss of the jobs happen due to that automation. So we have to think about that as well, right? So ethical side of the technology, it is a big area, right? It ensures that the new innovations are used responsibly and also safely and fairly while balancing the benefits with the potential risks as well, right? We should be able to balance those things when it comes to the ethical side of the technology, right? It is really important to consider how the technology impact the human rights and the social equity and the environmental side as well, right? While making sure that the technology serves the humanity best interest, we should think about, okay, what about the impact over the human beings? What about the human rights? What about the equity when it comes to social side? What about the environmental effect when we are using the robotics and these AI things and the nuclear technology or so on? Right? So we should be very careful and we should stick to the ethical side when we are dealing with these technical things. So here I have added some data regarding the chemical engineering side, right? You can read them out, right? You can read these slides. So it just show the how we, what about the seriousness in this chemical related engineering. So you should think about the disposal side and the environmental issues, right? And when it comes to civil engineering one, right? The safety is really important, right? And the environmental issues, of course, we have, right? When you develop some buildings, roads, and the bridge and other when you use some materials, so you should check the quality, right? And the safety, everything you should ensure here. Uh, and the robotic side and the environmental engineering side. So you can read this slide to get this idea. It is all about the ethics. It is all about how we practice the ethics, even in nanotechnology, how we apply the nanotechnology and what about the security, how we can protect our community, although we are using nanotechniques, so on, right? So that is all about the ethics. So if I go back, so we discuss about the ethical assessment in the engineering field and the institutionalization we discussed. And we mainly identify three objectives of the research ethics, right? To protect the participants, to protect the intellectual property right, to protect the scientific knowledge, right? So we have three main objectives. Try to remember those three main objectives, right? And then under research misconducting, we identified FFP technique, right? FFP research misconducting areas, fabrication, falsification, plagiarism is there. Then we discuss about the advantages and the limitations as well. And then we discuss more about the engineering ethics and the precautionary principle as well. So any questions up to this point? So you don't have any questions. So I will share you a few. So I hope you can see the screen. So this is regarding the sampling and the sampling techniques and under from formal sites. You also can find out. I just try to find them just to share with you, right? The steps uh, we have to consider, we have to conduct when we identify the sampling samples out of population, right? And a paper regarding the sampling methods and the process of calculating the sample. So the probability sampling, non-probability sampling, and the data collection part, and how we can apply the sampling techniques, right, practically. So we have more details. I will upload them on LMS as well. So you can refer them to get more idea about the sample calculation part, right? Sample identification part. And also another thing I want to show you. The formatting part, right? As you have to develop a proposal and your final thesis. Time to time, I will show you the formatting part and the other steps that required for your studies. So I have shared a Word document here. Maybe you know this, but the problem is majority of the students are not following this format, right? In our research meeting also, we told you that we will share, I think you may receive that guidelines as well. We uploaded them on LMS. And you should be very careful and be serious regarding the report, right? Because when the reviewers look at your report, before go in deep, right? Before read your methodology and the abstract or whatever the things you are mentioning, before moving to the research, the data collection and your conclusion, they just look at your research report, right? Sometimes you have done very small mistakes. Even when you are mention the technical terms, right? When you are mention the keywords and the abstract, right? When you are apply some, the general formattings. So they are very disappointed regarding the formatting, right? When it comes to this thesis report and the proposal. So I want to avoid that thing, right? Because most of the students, although they are doing a good work, they don't follow up these methods, right? Follow up this formatting part, right? So and another thing is when they add the table of content and the table of figures and the list of figures and the list of tables, then manually add it. Don't manually add it, right? So you can add it, but page numbers, you can manually add the page numbers. So it is not a good work, but I have seen that error. Some of the students, they don't practice these formattings in a work. You have, obviously you may have a laptop, right? And you may use this Word, Microsoft Word. So just write these things, right? Um, I'm telling this because most of the students are not following, right? That is what I'm telling. You may know these things. So when you add some chapter names, let's say we have some heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, like us, we have some main topic and the subtopics, no? So follow some proper way to, at the headings and the subtopics, main topic and the subtopics as well. So then you can directly apply them when you add the table of content. So that would be very easy. No need to manually add. Even no need to worry about the order of the pages, right? So you can manually, you can automatically update, right? So that table of content will be automatically updated. So what you have to do is, let's say you need to type chapter 1 regarding introduction, right? And under chapter 1, let's say you have, I will just write down like this, you have subtopics. Let's say these are subtopics, right? And then you have chapter 2, let's say. So chapter 2, obviously it is literature review. Under literature review also, I told you that you can add some subtopics. You can divide your big literature into small parts, right? Small parts, so that would be very effective, right? So under literature review also, you can add some subtopics. Let's say you have 2 subtopics, right? You can add more. Just to show you, I'm adding 2. So what you have to do is select this chapter 1 and go to this style in the home ribbon, right? Home tab in this ribbon. In home tab, there is a category called style. So go to that one and click this heading, not the heading 2. If you are selecting the major or main topic, let's say chapter 1, it is a heading 1. So click it and then put your cursor on this heading and right click it and go to the modify, right? So then click the modify button and here you can do the formatting part. Usually we apply the Times New Roman. No? So in here you can add the Times New Roman and let's say your font size would be 14 for the main topics and the color would be, let's say, black, and let's say you need to bold it and do the formatting part here and click automatically update. Put a tick here, right? Automatically update. Then okay, right? So now your chapter 1 introduction, right? Once you click it, you can see here it goes under heading 1. And here you also again have chapter 2. No? So just you have to just do the modification at once. Right? Okay, හැම පාරම කරන්න ඕනේ එක පාරක් modification එක කරාම හරි. Formatting එක කරාම හරි. Right? Just go to heading and right click and modify and do the changes and add the automatically update tick and no key. Right? So then once you add the chapter 2, that is also a main heading. No? So select it and just click the heading 1. So then the formattings is automatically done. You don't need to do the formattings one by one. Right? And then, so this is a subtopic. No? So then select that subtopic and go to heading 2. Let's say it is a heading 2 one. So if it is a heading 3 or heading 4, you can go like that. But let's say this is a heading 1 and you can just click the heading 1 tab and right click it and again modify. And here again, you have to add the font sizes, font colors. So all the formattings can be done here and tick automatically update. Okay. So this is a heading 1, right? Once you click this heading, you can see here it is a heading 1. So that will be highlighted here. And the third, the second one is also a heading 2, right? So then just click the heading 2. You have already done the formatting, so you just need to give a click. And then you have to add some numbering. No, you have to add the numbering. So here, go to this paragraph tab and select this one. Usually this is how we apply the numbering for the subtopics, right? Under each chapter. So this is 1.1 and and under chapter 1 it should be 1.1. So this should be 1.2. And this is also a heading 2. So we have already done the formatting. So you can simply click the heading 2 and it becomes the heading 2, right? So you see it is under heading 2. Just click the subtopic and check the style. So it shows as heading 2. And the second one is also a heading 2, a subtopic, second subtopic. So go to this one and again at the numbering, right? So this is 2.1. And this is 2.2. So now we have add the numbers. And then what you have to do is you have to add the table of content, right? So just keep a blank space here, or you can even add it under a new page and go to the references, right? Go to the references and here you can see table of content is there, right? At the right, the left side, you can see under reference tab, table of content is there. So this can be done only after you doing that formula, the formatting, which I was explained earlier, right? Heading 1 for the headings, right? For the headings, you have to do the formatting first using that heading 1, heading 2, heading 3 styles. And then go to the reference tab and table of content and you can select any type of table here, right? So I will go to this one, table of content. So that will be automatically updated. See, all the details I have added here automatically updated in the table of content, right? So we don't need to worry about the page numbers and the other stuffs, right? And let's say this should be in a new page now. So let's move to the new page. Chapter 1 is in page 2 and let's move the chapter 2 into a new page. Let's say, let's move this subtopic into a new page. Right. So then what you have to do is once you do the adjustment in your topics and once each chapter should be started with a new page, no? So chapter 1 should be started in a new page, and then if you start when you start the chapter 2, it should be started in a new page. Chapter 1 එක භාගයක් ඉවර කරලා එතනින් පටන් ගන්න එපා. Right? Each new chapter should be started in a new page. Right? And once you do the corrections and the adjustments, so you can simply go to the table of content and go to this update table. And if you want to update the entire table, you can click this one. Or if you just want to update the page numbers only, you can click the first one and click the OK button. So then you can see the page numbers are automatically updated. So let's say you have newly added a chapter 3 as well. And then once you add the chapter 3 and do the formatting, then go to this table of content and update the table and update entire table. Once you click the update entire table, that chapter 3 details will be added here. Right? So let's see. Let's see in here. You add a new chapter. Chapter 3, let's say methodology. So this is a new chapter, let's say. So what you have to do is, once you add the new chapter name, you have to select it and go to the heading 1, right? Click the heading 1 here. This one, click the heading 1. So it become a heading 1. And then go to the table of content and go to the update table. So now you have added a new chapter now. It is not only regarding the page numbers, it is about the entire table. So take the entire table and update it. So see, the chapter 3 methodology part is there, right? And if you do like this, once you convert this Word doc into a PDF, right? So when you are you also and your reviewers also when they are going to review your report, they can simply go to the table of content. Let's say they need to check your methodology, and they can simply click the methodology one, and a small cursor, like a cursor or a hand is visible. So we can simply click the methodology or whatever the chapter we need to refer, and it will directly move you to that chapter, right? That can be done only if you follow this method, and you can convert this into a PDF, and you can click it and directly go to the chapter you need to refer it, right? So this is the way of adding the table of content properly. And once you add the entire table, you can select it and do the, the general formattings as well. Right? General formattings can be done later, right? Because everything should be in Times New Roman, right? So once you finish the report writing one, you can select all and select the font style as Times New Roman, right? So that general settings can be done, but initially you have to do this setting. So that would be very effective, but some students just manually at the table of content chapter 1 and put these dots and at the page numbers. So it is really hard, right? And at these subtopics and just try to figure out the page numbers and at these full stops and at the page numbers. Don't do it, right? Because you are having this easiest way to add the table of content, right? Follow that one as well. So that is what I need to tell you, because you need to submit a proposal. So in that case also, please refer good formatting, right? First impression එකම නැති කරගන්න එපා, right? Research topic එකේ ඉඳන්ම impression එක නැති කරගන්න එපා. So yes, so that is all about I need to discuss today. And next week, 13th, you will be not having lectures, right? Because on Saturday, Sunday, 12th and 13th, you will not have any lectures, and you will have the holiday, New Year vacation. And after the New Year, we will start the lectures by 19th April. 12th and 13th, you will not have any lectures. 19th April, you will be having lectures, right? So that is all about the things I need to update you. Yes. So, and regarding the research, so there are only 3 students, but you can pass the message regarding the research topic and that synopsis and the intro. Synopsis mean you can give a brief intro, because when we are searching for a supervisor just to update regarding your area, we need to have some basic idea, right? So it is better to add a brief synopsis. And also, if you have selected a supervisor, add your CV at the supervisor CV and the consent form, and try to figure out and find a supervisor by your own. So that would be easy for you to continue, right? Because that is a non-person, no, maybe in your workplace or something, you can find academic also, you can find out a supervisor. Or else, if you're really unable to difficult to find a supervisor, add a comment as well, right? So then we can try to facilitate it. Yes. So then, any questions up to this point?
මිස් මේ අර අපිට කරන්න තියෙන assignment එක methodology එකක් ලියන්න මේ research ඒක මේ මිස් දැන් අපි කරන research එකේමද නැත්නම් අපිට කැමති එකක්ද කරන්න තියෙන්නේ?
ඒක ඔයාට ඕනේ research topic එකකට කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයාට දැන් research එකට ඔයාගේ actual දැන් final research එකට මොකක් හරි ඔයාට idea එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ඔයාට ඒකටම literature review එක develop කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයාට topics දෙකක් අරගෙන ඒක මම කිසිම restriction එකක් දාන්නේ නැහැ. ඔයාට කියන්නේ research එකට වෙනම topic එකක් අරගෙන ඒක continue කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. assignment එකට වෙන topic එකක් අරන් මොකක්ම හරි topic එකක් අරන් literature එකක් කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි ඔයාට රිසර්ච් ටොපික් එක ගැනම ලිටරේචර් එක කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් මං හිතන්නේ ඒක හොඳයි. ඔයාලට එතකොට අර අලුතින් ටයිම් වේස්ට් කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. ඒකම තව ටිකක් ඩිවෙලොප් කරන්න තමයි ඕනේ. ඒකට මම මොකුත් රෙස්ට්‍රික්ෂන්ස් දාන්නේ නැහැ. ඔයාලට කැමති නම් ටොපික් වෙනම නිකන් ටොපික් එකක් තෝරගෙන අසයින්මන්ට් එක කරන්න, රිසර්ච් එක වෙනම කරන්න. ඔයාලා කැමති නම් රිසර්ච් ටොපික් එකටම ලිටරේචර් රිවිව් එක ඩිවෙලොප් කරන්න. එතකොට ඔයගොල්ලොන්ට අන්තිමට ඒක ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයාලා එතකොට ඩිවෙලොප් කරලා ඉවරයිනේ. මාසයක් වගේ යනකොට ඩිවෙලොප් කරලා ඉවරයි ලිටරේචර් රිවිව් එකම. එතකොට ඔයගොල්ලන්ට ඒක පොඩ්ඩක් ඇඩ්ජස්ට් කරන්න, වෙනස් කරන්න, තව මොනවා හරි ඩීටේල්ස් ඇඩ් කරන්න තමයි වෙන්නේ. ඒක totally up to you. You decide and submit the assignments. I will not give you any restrictions. You are free to decide it.
මිස් මේ මොඩියුල් එකට අපිට එක්සෑම් එකක් තියෙනවද රිටන් එක්සෑම් එකක්?
ඔව් එක්සෑම් එකක් තියෙනවා. ලිටරේචර් රිවිව් එකෙන් assignment marks කැල් කරනවා. ඊට අමතරව අපි මේ ඩිස්කස් කරපු theories වලට පොඩි පේපර් එකක් තියෙනවා. ලොකු අර අනිත් මොඩියුල්ස් වගේ ලොකු පේපර් එකක් නෙවෙයි. පොඩි පේපර් එකක් තියෙනවා. රිටන් එක්සෑම් එකක් තියෙනවා. 60% ගන්න එක්සෑම් එකෙන් අනිත් ඒවා assessments වලින්. හැබැයි ටයිම් ෆ්‍රේම් එකත් එක්ක ලිටරේචර් රිවිව් එක විතරක් දෙන්න තමයි අපි ඩිසයිඩ් කරේ. ටයිම් එක තිබුණොත් මම තව අසයින්මන්ට් එකක් දෙනවා. හැබැයි දැනට ලිටරේචර් රිවිව් එක විතරයි අසයින්මන්ට් එක. ඊට අමතරව එන්ඩ් එක්සෑම් එකකුත් තියෙනවා. And I will discuss few module questions as well at the end of the semester. Any more questions? If you have any concerns with your research or supervisor selection or whatever the things you are facing, if you face any struggle, you can reach myself or else Miss Suvini, right? Sometimes we may not be able to answer all the phone calls, but if we couldn't answer your phone calls, you can just put a WhatsApp message as well. So then we can check it and get back to you, right? So අන්තිම මොහොත වෙනකන් ඉන්න එපා. මොනවාම හරි කන්සර්න් එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒක අපිට කලින් ඉන්ෆෝම් කරලා තියන්න. right? ඒකයි අපි ඔයගොල්ලන්ට ලොකු ටයිම් එකක් දුන්නේ ප්‍රොපෝසල් එකටත්. අපි එක්සෑම් එක ඇතුලේ දැම්මෙත් නෑ ප්‍රොපෝසල් රිවිව් එක. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඔය ඔක්කොම ක්‍රෑෂ් වෙන විදිහට තමයි යන්නේ. හැබැයි මේ පාර අපි ගොඩක් try කරා ඒකට ගොන්න ලොකු කාලයක් දෙන්න ප්‍රොපෝසල් එක කියන්නේ සුපර්වයිසර් කෙනෙක් හොයාගන්න. ඔයාලා ප්‍රොපෝසල් එක දෙන්න කලින් සුපර්වයිසර් කෙනෙක් ෆයිනලයිස් කරගෙන ඉන්න එක හොඳයි. right? ඒ නිසා ඒකට පොඩ්ඩක් කන්සර්න් කරන්න. ඒකට පොඩ්ඩක් ફોකස් කරන්න මේ දවස් ටිකේ. right? මම හිතන්නේ 18 මම දීලා තියෙන ඔයගොල්ලන්ට ඩෙඩ්ලයින් එක සුපර්වයිසර් ඩීටේල්ස්. හොයාගන්නම බැරි කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා නම් කමෙන්ට් එකක් දාන්න. ඔයාගේ සිනොප්සිස් එකත් එක්ක දාන්න. එතකොට අපිට පුළුවන් ඒකට ෆැසිලිටේට් කරන්න බලන්න. මොකද අපි සිලෙක්ට් කරන සුපර්වයිසර් ඔයාගේ රිසර්ච් එකට මැච් වෙන්නත් ඕනේ. ඒ නිසා අර පොඩි ඉන්ට්‍රොඩක්ෂන් එකක් සිනොප්සිස් එකක් ඕනි. 1 page එකක් තිබ්බම ඇති. මොකද ඒගොල්ලන්ට ටොපික් එක ගැන අයිඩියා එකක් දෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒගොල්ලෝ දැනගන්න ඕනේ ආව ගයිඩ් කරන්න පුළුවන්ද පැත්තට කියලා. ඒ ටයිම් ෆ්‍රේම් එකේදී ඕක ඉවර කරන්න බලන්න. අන්තිම වෙනකන් නම් ඉන්න එපා. සුපර්වයිසර් කෙනෙක් නැහැ කියලා ප්‍රොපෝසල් එක හෙටයි කියලා වෙලා මට කියන්න එපා. එතකොට මට ටයිම් එක මදි සුපර්වයිසර් කෙනෙක් හොයලා දෙන්න. right? Try to pass this message with your batchmates as well. right? Any questions?
අර මේ අපේ Google ෆෝම් එක දාලා තියෙන. එතකොට ආයි දැනුවත් කරන්න ඕනද ඒක?
නෑ
අපි
නෑ
අර
නෑ. ඔයාලා Google Form එකේ ඔයාලට මොනවා හරි ඉෂුව එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒක තියෙන රිසර්ච් එක සුපර්වයිසර් කලෙක්ෂන් එක වෙනමයි. එතන කමෙන්ට් එකක් දාලා තියෙනවා නම් ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ ඒක අපි චෙක් කරනවා. මං කියන අර ලාස්ට් මිටින් සමහර ළමයි ඉන්නෝනේ Google Form එකක් දැම්මත් ඒක ෆිල් කරන්නෙත් නැහැ. අන්තිම දවසේ ඇවිල්ලා කියනවා මට සුපර්වයිසර් කෙනෙක් නැහැ කියලා. එහෙම වෙන්න එපා. ඔයගොල්ලෝ Google Form එක ෆිල් කරලා තියෙනවා නම් ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. ඒක මම චෙක් කරනවා. එතකොට ඒකට අනුව මම ඔයාලව ෆැසිලිටේට් කරනවා.
මැඩම් සුපර්වයිසර් චාර්ටඩ් ඉන්ජිනියර් කෙනෙක්ම වෙන්න ඕනේද?
ඔයා ඇකඩමික් කෙනෙක් තෝරගන්නවා නම් මාස්ටර්ස් තියෙන එහෙම නැත්නම් ඊට වඩා තියෙන කෙනෙක් තෝරගන්න එක හොඳයි. එහෙම නැත්නම් chartered engineer කෙනෙක්, එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයාගේ engineer කෙනෙක් above masters qualification තියෙනවා. ඔයා වැඩ කරන තැන engineer කෙනෙක්, senior engineer කෙනෙක් වුණත් කමක් නැහැ. හැබැයි masters above වගේ qualifications තියෙන කෙනෙක් සහ ඔයාගේ research එකට guide කරන්න පුළුවන් කෙනෙක් වෙන්නත් ඕනේ.
මිස්
ඒ research
මාස්ටර්ස්
area
කිව්වම
එකට
මේ
knowledge.
MBA
ඔව්.
එකත් පුළුවන්ද?
ඔව් පුළුවන්. ඔයාලා CV එක අප්ලෝඩ් කරන්න. එතකොට අපිට චෙක් කරන්න පුළුවන් මොනවා හරි එහෙම ලොකු කන්සර්න්ස් එන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද අපි ෆැසිලිටේට් කරනවා ඔයාලා වර්ක් කරන තැනම කෙනෙක් නම් ඔයගොල්ලන්ව හොඳට ගයිඩ් කරන්න පුළුවන් ඒගොල්ලන්ට. සමහරට ඇකඩමිකලි වෙන්න නැති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි ඔයාලගේ රිසර්ච් ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එකට ගයිඩ් කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙන්න ඔයාලට එහෙම CV එකක් කවුරු හරි එහෙම සුපර්වයිසර් කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා නම් ඔයාලා සුපර්වයිස් කරන්න පුළුවන්. CV එක අප්ලෝඩ් කරන්න අර Google ෆෝම් එකට. එතකොට මොනවාම හරි කන්සර්න් එකක් තියෙනවා නම් එයා අපිට කන්වෙන්ට් එකක් ආවොත් එයාට ගයිඩ් කරන්න බැහැ කියලා ඒ වෙලාවට අපි ෆැසිලිටේට් කරනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපිට රිවිව් කරලා ඕකේ කරන්න පුළුවන්. සුපර්වයිසර් කෙනෙක් තෝරගෙන ඉන්නවා නම් අනිවාර්යෙන් CV එකයි කන්සෙන්ට් ෆෝම් එකයි අප්ලෝඩ් කරන්න. එතකොට අපිට ඒක චෙක් කරන්න පුළුවන්. Any more questions? තව මොනවද ප්‍රශ්න තියෙන්නේ? Okay, then we can wrap up the session for today, and thank you very much for joining. So then see you on 20th then. So you'll be having the New Year vacation weekend next week, and after that we will start the academics as usual, right? So okay, then thank you very much for joining and have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, madam.